Mr. President,
the Democratic leader.
Funding the government should be a bipartisan effort, but Republicans chose a partisan path, drafting their continuing resolution without any input from congressional Democrats. Because of that, Republicans do not have the votes in the Senate to invoke cloture on the House CR. Our caucus is unified on a clean April 11th CR that will keep the government open and give Congress time to negotiate bipartisan legislation that can pass. We should
recognize for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, that's exactly right. It's CR Day on Capitol Hill, and what is going on with Republicans? I mean, President Trump puts out a tweet and says, please, and all of a sudden, just flip-flops. But you know what? Let me do some mean tweets about how you feel about CRs when you're in the minority only. And the first one actually is from the gentleman from Texas. And it says, it's Groundhog Day in the House chamber, all the time, every day. Yet again, spending money we don't have, apparently only when he's in the minority. Another one from a colleague, comparing continuing resolutions to attending a P. Diddy party. In any given year, another colleague says, if Congress raises the debt ceiling, passes a CR, and rams through an omnibus bill, no member of Congress should receive a paycheck. That's awkward for you guys. How many of you are going to give back your paycheck? Another colleague, I've never voted for a CR. You sent me to Congress to cut wasteful spending, and I'm a woman of my word. You can guess who that is. And this one, this is my favorite. What does a CR stand for? It stands for capitulating Republicans, caving Republicans, said by a Republican. And you know what? I'm going to miss the Never CR group. I mean, they were great, but they're breaking up. And it was great to see them live while they were together. They had lots of fans. I'm going to miss them. I mean, they were mostly a boy band, okay? Some of them are going solo. Appears it's only Thomas Massie. But you know what? Something tells me there'll be a reunion, but only when they're in the minority. And to quote Representative Massie, talking about Republicans, I guess deficits only matter when we're in the minority. So listen, go home to your families, turn in your voting cards, give Trump the gavel, because that is what has happened to your entire party. You don't need to be here. He tells you to do something, you jump. And so what's going on in the world? Another representative brought what's going on in the world in the last 30 days. Well, let's see. Egg prices are up. Goods are up. Stock market is down.
You know, there's a lot of back and forth here. Mr. Smucker was talking earlier about the deficits. I mean, we just voted yesterday. You guys voted yes. We voted no on a budget with $6.75 trillion in expenses and only $4.9 trillion in revenues. You voted yesterday for a massive deficit increasing budget. In addition, the big, beautiful bill that everybody's talking about is going to increase the federal deficit by even more, $3 trillion, because there's $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, but there's only about $1.5 trillion proposed in expense cuts. And those $1.5 trillion in expense cuts can't be made unless you cut Medicaid. And you said you don't want to cut Medicaid. So that's an additional, even under those rosy scenarios, an additional $3 trillion in deficits. So I don't know what you guys are talking about. You want to cut things, but you won't give us the specifics as to what's being done. Mr. Musk is operating. Ms. Van Dyne talked about the witnesses that were here the other day. I asked each of the witnesses specifically, do you know what Mr. Musk is doing? Do you know if I think you said 100 people are working for him, Lloyd? 100 people are working for Musk, I think you said? But I mean, did they get background checks? Do we know that? Do you know, I'll yield to Mr. Smucker. Do you know if they got background checks? No, you don't know. Nobody knows. We don't know if they got background checks. We don't know what kind of security clearances they have. We don't know what their backgrounds are. I mean, these are simple, basic questions in running a multi-trillion-dollar organization. Are the people that you have, and you know, we hear different names about them, but they're young people that are gamers and hackers and computer experts. We don't know what their backgrounds are. We don't know if they got proper security clearances. We don't know if they have background checks. So we've got a big problem in the federal government. We've got way more in expenses than we have in revenues. it causes deficits. Our deficits are the highest percentage of our GDP than it's been in decades. The proposal, the CR that was passed yesterday increases the deficit. The big, beautiful bill that this group is proposing will dramatically increase the deficit. So you say we have to find expenses to cut. We need to go after waste, fraud, and abuse. Yes, let's do that. But we don't know what the expenses are that they're proposing. They're supposed to come before the Congress and propose specific cuts so that we can adjudge whether that makes sense. I don't think anybody here supports the idea when they cut the people that oversaw the nuclear stockpile. Nobody thought it was a good idea. Nobody thought it was a good idea when they cut the people that oversee the avian flu. Nobody thought it was a good idea when they cut the people that oversee a measles outbreak. Nobody thought those were good ideas. I don't think anybody here is going to think it's a good idea when they're cutting thousands and thousands and thousands of employees at Social Security, so that when people start calling up Social Security and they can't get their calls answered, and then you guys are going to say, look at that, I told you it was broken, but you want to cut 10,000 employees out of the 54,000 that are there. And then there's going to be an argument, like there's been in the past, to privatize Social Security. So let's just work together. Let's say we all want to try and balance the budget. We all want to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. To do that, we have a process and procedure in place for the federal government. You can't do it through impoundment. That's been ruled by the courts, and there's laws specifically passed by Congress that you can't do it that way. You have to go through the rescission process. So to come and make a proposal, I want to cut this, I want to cut that, I want to cut this, I want to cut that, this doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense, and then we decide yes or no based upon those individual things. It's a process that you're supposed to go through. It's not supposed to be done in the dark by some 20-year-old kids that we don't know if they got background checks or not. So let's all work together and try and accomplish our common goals of trying to make our country a better place. Thank you.
I'm going to vote against what came over from the House Republicans to the Senate last night, because I don't want to give my vote to support what Trump and Musk are doing. I do think there's real risks to a government shutdown, so I respect those who are saying they are concerned that President Trump will go even further if we hand him that possibility. But what's come over, which is often called a clean CR in the talk of the Congress, is not clean, it's dirty. It's got lots of provisions that will make cuts and harm organizations and communities all over our country. So, Sarah, I think this is a terrible idea. We should instead be working together to finish our 2025 bipartisan appropriations that we've got ready to go here in the Senate, and find an agreement that keeps the government open for 30 days while we finish that work.
We're an equal branch of government. And you start off with a blather, and yet we look at the empty seats here. Where's Elon Musk? I'm sure he's a genius and is a very credible person because of the wealth he's accumulated. But that does not put him above the law or the responsibility to come before this committee in this Congress. If he's so great, if these plans and all the fraud and abuse that he's found are so eminent, why isn't he here explaining it? You know why. Because he's out to privatize Social Security. He's been on television the last couple of days talking exactly about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and what he intends to do. Privatize it. The American people, some of them may have been born at night, but not last night.
House Democrats are very clear. We're asking Senate Democrats to vote no on this continuing resolution, which is not clean, and it makes cuts across the board, and it's going to be one of those things where people are going to look at this vote, and every bad thing that now happens with Doge and Donald Trump, Elon Musk, it can go back to this vote. So we're asking Senate Democrats to vote no.